Alright guys, so I want to show you another cool thing that you can do once you start designing more of a responsive design, and it's really easy to implement. It's not as hard as what you think, and that's putting animations in. So after you start designing everything with CSS, you can use animations to specify what you want your CSS to be at specific points. And you can use all of your normal stuff that you're doing for CSS to tag what you want to be designed, how, and have the look. And really, what we're looking at, and let me show you this. So I just have an animation for my H1 right now when I'm hovering over it. So once I hover over it, it's kind of like the Knight Rider like eye thing. It's probably too old for you guys. Okay, so when I'm hovering over it, it's doing that animation. Now, how did I do that? If you go to the W3 schools, they have good list of the stuff that you're looking at for. Basically, what we're doing is we're using the at keyframes and we're doing it in our CSS page. And then we are specifying using the animation keyword and then putting a hyphen, and we're specifying if we want to delay, which direction, the duration, our fill mode, our iteration count, the name. I don't use this one, but you could use this one, and the timing function. The ones that you absolutely have to use is you have to use animation name and you have to use animation duration. Okay? The animation duration, if you set up an animation, it will default to 0, so it won't play anything. If you don't have your animation name, it's not going to do anything either. Okay? So if we go to something that we want to apply to. So here I have my header, I have my H1 inside my header, so it looks like this. That's where it says header, and then H1, so it's hitting just the Redbeard Productions. Okay, so in my styles, whatever I have as my normal CSS design, that can stay, but then I have to start adding some things. So the animation name, I need to name the keyframes that I gave a name to previously. And I'll show that one in just a little bit. And then you have to give a duration. So this is going to say how long it's going to take from start to finish. So if you want to set just 2 keyframes, it's just going to go from one point to the other and gradually progress until it morphs into your final keyframe. You can set as many keyframes as you want. Your animation iteration count, you have multiple options to put that. So if I take off infinite, I can put a number or I can put infinite. So if I wanted to go 2 times, I could put 2 times. Let me save and go back. And then when I'm hovering, that was 1. It counts when it goes in reverse as 2. I can choose the direction, so maybe I don't want it to go alternate. Maybe I want it to go, see, I have a choice of alternate, which would go forward and then backwards. Alternate reverse means it's going to start backwards and then go forwards. Normal means it's just going to go forward. Reverse means it's just going to go in reverse. So if I put this normal and I have my 2, I save, and I go back, 1, 2. Okay? The fill mode, what that really means is that this specifies the style, what you want to happen basically to it. Do you want it to reset to what it previously was? Do you want it to hold what it was in the last frame onward if it's not playing again? Do you want it to start with what it's going to have from the first frame before the animation starts? Do you want it to go both ways where it has the formatting from the first frame is what it looks like before it starts the animation, and then what it looks like on your last keyframe what that would look like, and that would continue on. I can change those. So if I deleted this so we could see what that would, our options, I have backwards, both, forwards, and none. So if I wanted an animation to go for just a little bit, and then just to hold whatever it previously had, and then that's what it is. So maybe I'm just opening up my page and having a little bit of stuff happen, and then I keep it. I can set that. So we can choose what we want to happen. So default is none. Okay. So if I want, and I had it set as forwards, I wanted it to apply, it's going to apply and hold that last keyframe. Okay. Now, the minimum is the name and the duration. The other things are just to help put icing on the cake. I can also do a timing function. And if we go and read what the timing function is, timing function is basically the speed curve. So this is the default where it just starts slow, speeds up, and then ends slow. I can have it where it's the exact same speed throughout. I can have it where it just has a slow start, but it speeds up and keeps fast. Where it starts fast, but then it slows down. I can have it basically the ease in and out is really the ease. And then I can do a cubic Bezier so that I can choose basically my values that I want it to do. So you could play around with this if you're not getting what you want with the other options. Okay, now let's look at the keyframes. So what I said is that we have to use this at keyframes. Okay, now there's a couple ways that we can do it, so let me scroll up so you guys can see both of them, and then I'll show it in my code. Okay, we can do from, and then we put in whatever design we want using CSS, and then we can put to, which basically means 0 and 100%. Okay, and our keyframes, this is what is letting CSS know that these are the keyframes that I want to hold for my animation, and this is the name that I give my keyframes. So I'm going to end up having sets of double brackets, one for the whole keyframes, and then a set of brackets for each keyframe that I have. And then I just apply it to whatever selector that I want it to. So it would be good if you're trying to design it where you can just tag it to an ID, and then you can just anything that you want to be animated that way, and to start and stop at the exact same time, you could just apply it as an ID to all of your selectors, and all of your HTML elements, apply the ID, and then the ID would be what you're attaching the animation to. If you wanted to do percentages, which is what I did, I can set keyframes. So I could say my first keyframe, I want it to basically be my default. My last keyframe is a default, and then I can put in all the other keyframes that I want of what I want it to look like. So my keyframes, this is actually my keyframe for my header, which is pretty big because I'm doing technically 10 keyframes. Well, 11 if you want to count to 0. So I'm starting off with no background image, and then at my 10% I am using a gradient where I have, and if I hover over, we can see I have where my red is starting far on the left, 20%. I have where my red is a little bit more in, it's farther in, and all I did was just move that. Now, trying to design, if you're doing this by hand, I mean, you can type it in by hand, but using Dreamweaver, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to use that selector, apply that change that you want to happen, and then copy and paste it into your percentages or your from or to keyframes. Because if I go into CSS Designer, into my style sheet, I'm not going to be able to see it. I don't see the at keyframe. Okay, so that is problematic for me to try to be able to design straight in here, because I can't just add it, because it can be applied to anything. So what I did is I did this. Let me just copy so I can show what it was like. So I had here, I was applying for my H1 so I could see what it's doing. I was applying it here, going to my CSS designer, and then I can actually select that selector, go to my background, make a little change, which would just update that. So that's 84%. If I drug it down to my one right here, now it changed to 99%. And then I would copy this and go up to my next frame that I wanted to change, so this one, and then I would just paste it. And then when I was done, I don't need this anymore because now I have it set up for my animation and I can just delete it back out. So that's how I set up animations, just to show you that now I have it applying as hover. I can take that hover off. It's just going to automatically start going 2 times and it stops. If I want it to continue on forever, it's going to continue going on forever. If I want the direction to go both ways, I need to actually use the right words, alternate. Okay. Now, one thing to note, your animations should really be used to help add functionality. If I have something like this is signs of an amateur website, of having flashy things go off on your website. It draws attention away from what you want to actually have the person look at. So if you are having animations going on for no apparent reason other than you think it looks cool, you are actually going to draw viewers and readers away from your website. It should almost not be noticeable. It just makes it look more professional. So having this go with no apparent reason is actually bad design. So I'm not going to end up having it just continue like that. Having it go maybe as a hover, it's almost kind of like a cool Easter egg. It's not really affecting, but if I don't want that there, so let's say I'm going to actually take that off of my header, and maybe I want my navigation, when they have selected it, that is what I want to, like when they're hovering over it. So let's go down to my right here, text decoration. So let's go ahead and paste that. Actually, I'm going to do it when they hover over it. So nav ULLI a hover, and this is what I want. So I'm going to apply the animation when they're hovering over a navigation link. So now when I refresh, I don't have anything showing up, but now when I'm hovering over, that is a little bit more functional. Kind of add a little bit of flashiness with giving functionality. Now they know that they're hovering over a navigation link, and I'm adding that animation to it. Okay, so that's what you're really looking for when you're designing, when you're doing your animations, when you're doing your responsiveness. I may not want this once I have my size down. So once I shrink this down and I'm on my smaller size, this may not be a good design having my animation, so I will probably want to remove it. So I'm going to have to go to my CSS designer. I'm going to want to copy that over. So right click, duplicate into media query, and Then when I go into this one, now I have this. I want none. Okay. I'm going to change this to 0 seconds. Change all my stuff to none. I don't want the animation when it's within that size. If you think about it, if they're running a smaller size, they may not be able to handle a lot of work going on with their website anyways. So now my animation is no longer active when I'm at that smaller size. When I increase the size and I'm back to my 2 columns, now my animation is active again. Okay, so this is what you're looking for when you're doing animations. You're adding responsiveness. It needs to be functional. Otherwise, you're creating a flashy website that's going to draw people away. If that was continuing to go on while I'm trying to read and I have things blinking, everybody just gets curious and starts drawing the readers away. You don't want that in your design, but you do want to add some pizzazz to your website to help draw readers in, to make it look like you did actually put intelligent thought in your design. So having something like this is something that you want to do for your website. Okay, it's almost essential to have for a modern looking website, but it doesn't have to be something that's continually going. You could do animations for how your text, if they are hovering or focusing on certain text, you could have the font change or increase in size to help show that they're focusing on that piece. Okay, if as they're scrolling down, maybe you want some other stuff to happen for their different images. So even just this, when they're hovering over, it has to do with what I'm talking about for my game. So they're able to kind of see a little bit more. I'm adding functionality to the website without inundating the reader with lots and lots of text. Okay, so consider these things. You could actually design using some pseudo classes, first letters, first words of paragraphs, and having that increase in size as they're hovering over to help draw them to that paragraph with naturally with their eyes so that they can start reading, but then your animation needs to stop. Okay? All right, have fun. Good luck.